Thank you for joining us this afternoon, and congratulations on your new ride. For those of you who already went electric, sometimes people join people who are just about to go electric. They want to do a deep dive and really understand what it's going to take to go electric. So I welcome you as well. My name is Annika Osborne. I'm with Cool the Earth, which is an environmental nonprofit organization with a mission to reduce carbon emissions and air pollution. Our Ride and Drive collaboration focuses on helping people go electric with EVs and e-bikes. Whether you got your EV from Cartelligent, a dealer, or you bought it used, we're happy that you could join us this afternoon, and we hope you can make the transition to driving, that this webinar helps make the transition to driving electric nice and smooth for you. I want to thank the City of Palo Alto Utilities for sponsoring this webinar tonight. They are great partners. We've been offering EV and e-bike discount campaigns with them, and a bunch of programming that's really interesting. Most recently, our brand new programming that we did with Palo Alto is called EVs for Backup Power. So we'll be doing another one of those later this month, I think the last day of this month. So join us for that one as well. Here's our agenda for this webinar. We're going to talk a lot about charging at home, at work, on the road, during a power shutdown. Then we'll be talking about how to access clean, affordable electricity. We'll do a deep dive on incentives, including the federal tax credit, which has just recently changed. So it might be different for different people who are on this webinar. And at the end, we'll have Q&A. Today, we'll review all of these items that should help you with a smoother transition to going electric. So real quickly, I just wanted to thank everyone who's attending for their commitment to driving electric. Decreasing fossil fuel consumption both reduces carbon emissions and air pollution, which helps every living being on this planet. So thank you for going electric. And just real briefly, I just want to take a quick look at the breakdown of California's greenhouse gas emissions. While it's important to take lots of different climate actions, this chart emphasizes the importance of getting off of fossil fuels and getting out of our gas cars, really. Our passenger vehicles are the single largest source of emissions in the Bay Area, in California, and in the US, representing nationally over 35% of our individual carbon footprint. In the Bay Area, for many, more than 50% of our carbon footprint. So when you switch from a gas car to an EV and plug into clean energy, that, like we can here in the Bay Area, we are able to cut our carbon footprint in half. So thank you for that. You should all feel really good about that. And it's not just you taking that individual action, but by going electric, you're going to talk to lots of other people about going electric. And, it's the big revolution, EV revolution that's happening here. So we're going to start by talking about charging. This is a bit of a charging overview. People get worried about charging, but for most people, 80 to 90% of charging is done at home or at work. Charging is easy at home and at work. You just plug in the charger. At home, you just plug in the charger that comes with your vehicle into a standard 120 volt outlet. There are no install costs besides perhaps a grounded heavy-duty extension cord. And you can charge 25 to 40 miles in 8 hours, which may sound really slow. In the Bay Area, on average, people drive 25 miles a day. So this simple solution called Level 1 works great for most people. If you drive more than 40 miles a day, a good option is to see if you can charge at work. Then you could charge a little bit at home, a little bit at work. If not, you may want to purchase a home charging station for Level 2 charging. Most people who go electric explore this option, but it's not necessary for most people. So with a Level 2 charger, you'll get about 25 miles in an hour, so you can easily get a full charge overnight. I want to point out, though, that charging an EV is different from fueling up a gas car. When I drove a gas car, I would wait till the gas tank went down to about 1/8 full, go to the gas station, fill it up to 100%, and drive, and every week I'd pretty much do that. But with driving electric, I basically plug in every day, and I'm just really like topping off the electricity that I used that day. And for me, most of the time, that's just going from like 60% to 80%. which is the amount that most manufacturers recommend that you charge to, 80%. That's to protect the battery. Just as an FYI, if you're about to go on a road trip or go on a longer drive, you can charge your car to 100% like the day before, so you can use the full capacity of your battery. So it's, yeah, and it is very rare to charge your vehicle from 10% to 100% on a day-to-day basis. That's just not how it's done. You know, it's very different from the gas experience. The first step for both of these solutions is to check in with an electrician. I would check in with an electrician if you're just plugging into a 120 volt outlet, just to make sure that you are not wired to having lots of different outlets going to the same circuit. So you just want to make sure that you have enough capacity on that level 1 outlet. And then for level 2, you may have to, you know, draw some of the some wiring and install a 240 volt outlet. So good idea just to check in with an electrician. So charging away from home is easy too. There are many level 2 public chargers available, so you can charge when you're around town and running errands. For me, when I go to my local farmer's market, they have a bunch of level 2 chargers there. So I just plug in when I park, and for the hour that I am at farmer's market, I pick up like 25 miles for about $1, which is really great. So when you're shopping, it's great to do that. But when you're on a road trip, you'll want to fast charge with a level 3 charger, which is the fastest charging available. There are 3 standards for level 3 charging. The one on the left is CHAdeMO and is only used for Nissan Leafs and some older Japanese models like the Mitsubishi Outback plug-in hybrid. The one on the right is strictly used for Tesla. And the one in the middle is the one that all of the other cars use. I will note that Tesla is about to open up a lot of charging stations for CCS for all EVs. They're just kind of piloting it right now. I've heard that in the Bay Area, there's one. So the way they're doing that is they're adding something called a Magic Dock, which allows, you know, with a separate cable that allows you to plug into your charging port if you don't drive a Tesla. And you just use a QR code. They have a sign with a QR code. You just use that to pay for the electricity that you use. So far I've heard that there's one of those Magic Docks in Scotts Valley. On your way to Santa Cruz from the Bay Area, you can go and charge your EV there. And then I believe it's Placerville as well that has the Magic Dock. But they, you know, Tesla has committed to building out many more supercharging networks for those who don't drive Teslas. Just to recap, level 1 works with a 120 volt outlet, a regular home outlet. You'll get anywhere between 4 and 6 miles of charge an hour, or up to 40, 50 miles, you know, in 8 hours overnight or whenever you're parked, which is enough for most people. We recommend that you start with level 1 and upgrade to level 2 as needed, unless you know you're going to be using 40 miles or more daily. Level 1 is low cost and easy solution. You just plug in your charging cable to the outlet. You may need a grounded heavy duty extension cord to reach your car. And it's a good idea to check with an electrician just to make sure you have that you can plug into a dedicated circuit on your electrical panel. If you are driving a plug-in hybrid, level 1 is enough. You won't need to buy level 2 charging station. Just be sure to plug it in every night so you can drive mostly on electricity. I also wanted to just say we're a pretty small group here tonight, 15 people. If you have a question as I am going along, feel free to raise your hand or just blurt out like, hey, I have a question. Also, you can throw questions in the chat. I'll try to check them as I'm presenting, and we'll take a look at those at the end of the presentation as well. All right, so level 2 charging. Level 2 requires a 240 volt outlet, like your clothes dryer. You'll get about 25 miles of charge an hour, and you can fill up your battery overnight if it's empty, which is a rare occurrence, since most of the time you'll just be topping off the electricity that you've been using. If you drive, 40, 50 or more miles per day, and you can't charge at work, you'll probably want to set up a level 2 charger at home. First, you'll want to assess the cost. Installation costs vary depending upon your home electrical system, the distance that the wires and conduits need to run from the breaker box to the charging station, and labor rates for the electrician. To help figure this out, hire a licensed electrician. You can ask a friend, a neighbor, look on Nextdoor, Yelp. You'll want to ask your electrician for the maximum amps and buy a charging station that matches this rate. I will send you a link to a home charging advisor in my follow-up email that should be able to help you find the charging station that's right for you. So before buying the charging station, you'll want to determine the best location, like where you're going to be setting it up and charging from. You want to make sure that the cable can easily reach your car's charge port and that it's long enough to reach a second EV if you get 2 EVs in the future, which is pretty common. Ask your electrician to install your station also so that it's portable, not permanently fixed to a wall. In case you need to relocate it, you'll have a flexible solution. See a question in the chat. You mentioned generally not going over 80. Yeah, 100, Hyundai 95. Heard owners say it's okay to go. Okay. Yeah, I would just, yeah, I've heard, I think my brother has a Polestar and I think he said that they recommend 90%. I would check your manual to see what they recommend. But it's really just to protect the battery, so if you don't need to drive it, really, use the full capacity on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't really matter if you're just kind of going from like 40 to 80%, or if that's enough for you, then there's no point in going all the way to 100, except for crank it up the night before you're going on a road trip so that you have that full capacity. Okay, so if you're interested in level 2 charging at home and you already have a 240-volt outlet, a smart splitter can be useful. Smart splitters are 240-volt safety devices that can be used for a home EV charging and appliance setup. So you'd probably use this if you already have like a dryer set up in your garage and you're going to park your EV in the garage. You could use this smart splitter just to make sure that you don't blow your circuit. And once you've started driving electric, it's ideal to charge your EV from rooftop solar. There's a federal tax credit available this year and for the next 10 years for 30% off the cost of rooftop solar and a battery. If you want to get a battery for resilience, it is a great feeling to charge your car from the electricity that you generate from your own roof. If you're not ready for solar, City of Palo Alto's utilities electricity is already carbon neutral, and CPAU has some of the most affordable electricity around. To make the most of renewables, they recommend that you charge your EV during peak solar hours. So that's from like 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. if that's possible, if you work from home, or if you have charging at work. Charging during that time is the best time of the day because we have a lot of solar energy on our grid in California. And if we don't use all of the solar energy that's generated, or if we don't store it, it's gone. So we want to, most utilities are now recommending that you charge during the day when the sun is shining as much as possible. Otherwise, anytime after midnight is good. The times that you really want to avoid charging are from like 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. That's when most people come home from work and the grid, is getting most of its demand for electricity. So if you're not a City of Palo Alto's utilities customer, other utilities and CCAs have clean options as well. Some offer a special reduced EV or time of use rate so that you pay for electricity during certain times of the day. So besides plugging into clean energy, you also want to switch to affordable energy. And I believe if you're a CPAU customer, Connie, I'm not sure if you're here. Yes, you are. I believe if you're a CPAU customer, the rate is the same 24/7. If that's not the case, Connie, could you please comment? But for people throughout the Bay Area, I think half of the people who signed up for this webinar are from Palo Alto, half are not. So if you live in other areas, this is like a typical rate. So off peak is from midnight to 3 p.m. So most of the time is off peak. And then there's this partial peak from 3 to 4 and 9 to 12. And the peak time is 4 to 9. So electricity is the least clean from 4 to 9. And it is also the most expensive. So you really want to try to avoid charging during that time. So you'll also, if you do switch over to one of these time of use rates, you also want to make sure that this time of use rate works for your lifestyle, because you'll be charged this rate for all of your electricity usage. So this works out really well when you can run your dishwasher after midnight, the washer and dryer also during this time, and use most of your electricity between midnight and 3 p.m. For me, it's easy because I work from home, so I now do the laundry during the day. I can delay my dishwasher to go after midnight, and then I charge my car. We have solar, so I charge my car starting at 10 a.m. so I can use as much of the energy that we are generating as possible. I have a friend who doesn't work from home. She drives electric, and this does not work for her family and her lifestyle because she does her laundry at night when she comes home, and it just doesn't work for her. So just check that out. I will also send you a link to this ev.pg&e.com/rates, where you can actually test out which rate plan is best for your lifestyle. So say goodbye to the gas station. It's super convenient and easy to charge at home or at work. You just need to get in the habit of charging daily or as needed. To save money and charge with clean energy, you can program your car to charge during those off-peak times. Like we just talked about, when you're not charging at home, you'll want to double check that you are overriding the charging times that you've programmed. I've never had that problem, but some friends who drive electric have, where you have it set up to only charge during certain times of the day. So if you are charging at a public charging station, just when you plug in, just make sure that you can see that the charging has started, so that you don't walk away and do shopping for 2 hours and come back and haven't gotten a charge. You just want to double check. You can also typically get updates on your phone through the different charging networks, so that you know what's happening with your charging, so you know it's actually live. And I've done that before on my other EV, on one of my EVs, where I thought I was charging and then I came back and I wasn't, and it's kind of a big bummer. Let's see, on a day-to-day basis, we've already talked about this. Most manufacturers recommend that you charge your battery to 80% to avoid any potential battery degradation. Just crank it up to 100%. That's something you can also set on your EV or on your charger. And then if you drive a plug-in hybrid or a PHEV, just remember to always plug it in. You may be able to cover your daily driving footprint on all electricity. When you charge at work, your workplace may be your primary, or if you can charge at work, your workplace may be your primary source of charging, especially if you live in in an apartment or a condo. Or you can also use it to just boost your range when you're at work. You may as well, if you're parked at work all day, use all that nice solar energy that's available during the day. You might want to be sure to check your employee benefits for driving electric. Sometimes there's discounted charging for employees. I know I live in San Rafael, and I know if you're an employee of the county of Marin, you can put in a special code and get half price electricity. So that's really nice. If needed, it may be useful to find chargers near your workplace. Also, I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. And then finally, advocate for charging at work. I know, sort of ironically, during the pandemic, a lot of workplaces were adding, chargers to their, at their offices. Some people are going back to work, others are not, but it's still a great resource if you have that. And if you do want charging at work, I think the way to get it is the more people ask for it, the more likely you are to get EV charging at work. So there are several EV charging solutions for people who live in apartments and condos, and more solutions are on their way. So if a charging station is not available, people charge by plugging into a standard 120-volt outlet if it's available and allowed. Sometimes if you have a carport and you can park in a carport, there's a 120-volt outlet available at each of the carports, but all of that electricity is on a different electrical panel, or a different circuit or whatever. So billing is shared amongst everybody who lives in that apartment or condo. So sometimes they don't allow you to plug in, but there are these new really cool smart outlets that are helpful in this scenario. I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. Other people charge at work. You can use public chargers, public fast chargers, or level 2 chargers. On average, fast charging will get you about 70% of battery charge in 30 minutes or less. With that Hyundai Ioniq 5, it's like 18 minutes to go from 10% to 80% of your battery. So that's awesome. Approximately 90% of Californians now live within 15 miles of an Electrify America ultra fast charger. And Biden's infrastructure plan, which passed a few years ago, includes 500,000 new fast charging stations in the United States. It's a network of chargers, so you can go anywhere you want in the country, essentially. They're setting up a charger every 50 miles. So that's going to be really great if you're going on a long cross-country road trip. And then the state is also putting in a lot of new, EV infrastructure as well. If you're in the situation where you can't charge at home, you might want to check out EV Match, which is a peer-to-peer charging network. And again, advocate also, for your property manager, let them know that the future is electric and that if they want to keep their tenants, that they need to install EV charging. So I just wanted to touch on smart outlets. So smart outlets offer an affordable way for EV owners to charge their vehicles in a shared space. So you basically just install a box like that. This is Plugzio is one of the examples. You plug that over a 120 or a 240 volt outlet, and then you can use an app to, access it through that QR code. You can use an app to start the charging session and end the charging session and hook it up to a payment system so that you're paying for the electricity that you've used. Orange Charger, Plugzio are two good options. And as I mentioned before, for most people, 90% of charging is done at home or at work. Charging on the road is getting better and better all the time. It does take a little bit of practice. While there are many level 2 public chargers around that you can use when you're, running errands and just kind of around town, level 3 charging is for charging on the road, and it is the fastest charging available. Often you'll know that EV charging is available in a parking garage or somewhere nearby when you see that blue sign right there with the EV. I see a question. My recommendation is rework between 20 to 80%. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Ron. Yeah, 20 to 80% is the kind of optimal place to keep your battery charged. Okay, so a couple of public charging tips. So we talked to, the speed of charging depends on the car and the speed that the charging station can provide. Any CCS car can use any CCS charging station. So that's, EVgo, ChargePoint, Electrify America. It will charge at the speed of the lowest common denominator. For instance, if your car takes 50 kilowatts and the charging station can give you 200 kilowatts, you'll still charge at 50 kilowatts. This is the case for the Chevy Bolt. That's the fastest speed that the Chevy Bolt can charge. If your car can take 150 kilowatts, like many of these new cars that are coming, and the charging station can only charge at 100 kilowatts, you'll be charging at 100 kilowatts. So it's just something to be aware of. I know it's like kind of hard to think about that, but just get to know the speed of charging that your car can take. So for example, sometimes I pull up to like an Electrify America charging station where they have 8 different kiosks. And I see, there are a couple of them are super fast charging, like 250 volt. Some of them are 150. So we just want to make sure that like the cars that can take the really fast charging can use those 250 volt chargers. So if you drive a car that takes a slower charge, you can be courteous and park into one of those, use one of those chargers that has not as fast of a rate of charging. So the next one seems kind of silly, but we've all been there. So sometimes you're at this, fast charger, you're like plugged in, and then it's time to go. You've hit the like stop charging button on the kiosk or on your phone, and you still can't release the charger. So make sure you unlock your car. For me, that means like double clicking unlock on the car fob to release the charger. I've had several people call me, they're like charging for the first time. They're like, help, what do I do? So make sure that you know to just unlock your car before you pull it out. You'll also want to watch out for the linger fee, which is actually a really courteous thing. So many of the charging networks will charge you a linger fee if you are parked and plugged in and your charging session has ended. So they'll charge you a certain amount. I know with Tesla, it is like $1 a minute. So if I am already done charging and I'm still using, plugged into that charger, I will get charged $5 if I'm there for 5 minutes. Of course, the Tesla app will let me know that, you're done, your session is done. You should go unplug, or it'll give me a warning like your session is almost done. At one point I was at a grocery store. I was shopping and I got the message. I was charging while I was shopping and I got the message. And I basically had to leave my cart in the grocery store. I ran out to my car, moved it, and then went back to my shopping. But it's really a good thing because we don't want to be, like taking up the space when other people can use that charging space. And, it didn't used to be such a big deal, but now we see more and more people charging. We see these EV charging stations really getting a lot of use. So it's something to consider. See another question in the chat. Many level 3 chargers do not work at high speed. Yeah, they're all different speeds. So some of them, most of the ones that I've seen are like 150 or 350, like Electrify America. Actually, EVgo, I know they're about to release their next kind of generation of chargers. Most of the EVgos that I've seen are more 50 kilowatt. So yeah, that is correct. Thanks for that comment, Jeff. Can you repeat what you said about a Chevy Bolt using a level 3 and how many amps? Okay. So with a Chevy Bolt, so all Chevy Bolts don't come with level 3 charging. Some of them only have level 2 charging and you had to pay extra for level 3 charging. So you'll want to find out if you have level 3 charging available on your car. Other than that, if you're just using level 2 charger, you can get 25 miles in an hour when you're charging, whether that's at home or at a public charging station. Okay, moving on. Oh yeah, this is I just got this chart. This is the first time I'm presenting it. So this kind of shows you a little bit. Oh, this is interesting. So this is another thing. I don't have this on my last slide, but I really should. Oh no, I do. The fuller the battery, the slower the charge. So I don't go on a lot of road trips. So typically, I don't go on a lot of road trips. So I'm not depleting my battery to low levels very often. I try to time it when I'm on a road trip so that I end up at the next charging station when my battery is somewhere between 10 and 20%, because when that is the case, charging is really, really fast. So when I'm pulling in at that point, with my Tesla Model 3, it's 4 years old, I am charging at like 800 miles an hour when I'm at like 15, 20% of my battery. And then as my battery gets fuller and fuller, I can just see that it's getting, I'll move on to this, that it's slowing down. The charge is like significantly slowing down. I'm looking right now on the green chart. I noticed that about half of the people who joined this webinar did buy a Tesla. So I'm focusing on this right now, but we'll talk about all the others. Do you see, like, when the battery is at 5% of charge, you're charging very quickly until about 25% of charge, and then it just significantly slows down. So you can take a look at the others, like the ID4 doesn't charge quite as quickly, but it stays at a more even rate. And then really you can see that all of the charging, it's, controlled by the car. It's really slowed down when your battery gets fuller and fuller, and that is to protect it from battery degradation. I wish they had more cars. I really wish they had the Chevy Bolt on here, because it would be interesting to see that. But this is, pretty typical The Chevy Bolt would be more similar to like the Nissan Leaf in its charging capacity. So it's probably a little bit more steady throughout the whole charging session. Yeah, and for me, like what I've noticed is like when I get to like 80% of my battery being full, it's so slow and it's painful. Like if I am actually going to sit down at a meal, I'll let it go to 100% or maybe 95%. I don't do this very often, so it's just a very rare thing. So I might let it go to 95%, but if I am like ready to go to my next stop, I will just charge it to 80% and then just hit the road again and hit the next charging station, because to me, that's faster. I'd rather stop a little more frequently and stretch my legs. But just to give you a little bit of a scenario, like I took the Model 3 down to San Diego a year ago, and kind of my rhythm that I was doing is I was driving for about 3 hours, then I would stop for about 20 to 30 minutes. Then I was driving for 3.5 hours, and then I stopped again for 20 to 30 minutes. So that's how it went for me. And I like to really time that with my like lunches, or if I'm going to stop and get a drink, so it works out really great. And my EV has a 220-mile capacity at this point. It's 4 years old, so I can only go 220 miles. So that kind of worked for me. With a lot of these new EVs, the range is much higher. Some of them have like 300 plus range. So you could go, 4 hours, 4.5 hours without stopping to charge. Another question in the chat. Polestar 2 charging. I think it's somewhere between, I actually have another article from Bloomberg that I can share at the end. Please remind me or put it in the chat, that tells you exactly the charging speed of all of the different EVs. So I'll look for that and put it in the chat at the end of the webinar. Happy to do so. So thousands of public charging sites provide fast charging, and more are coming. This is an app that we highly recommend that you get, PlugShare. It's kind of like the gold standard of navigation apps. There are some other, there's another one called Better Route Planner and another one called Eon Charge that I've been playing around with a little bit. It's easy to plan a trip when you're using these navigation apps. Some EVs actually have navigation apps for charging stations built into their navigation system, so that's great. That is the case with Tesla. With the Tesla, I could basically put in like Tiffany's, Fifth Avenue, New York, and it'll tell me exactly how to get there and where to stop to charge. So very convenient. But I've noticed a lot of, each navigation on each EV navigation that's built in is a little bit different. So it's, you'll want to just familiarize yourself with it. I also have a Volkswagen e-Golf that I bought used. It only has 80 miles. It's our second car. It's kind of our round the town car. We don't need to use it. We don't use it for road trips. But there was a point I was going to make about that. I'll come back to that. I can't really remember, but oh yeah, what I do with that, I have Apple CarPlay, so I can basically just push a button and say, navigate to EV charging near me. And then it'll come up with a list of like 10 chargers close to me, and then I can just navigate to that place. So that's pretty handy as well. If you don't have like a heavy duty navigation app like built in. My e-Golf is a 2016, so it's really old. It doesn't have all the fancy bells and whistles of some of these newer EVs that are coming out. Okay, I am actually going to, oh yeah, I just wanted to say a Better Route Planner. I don't have it on here right now, but I probably should. It's kind of interesting. So you can really customize it by saying like how many people are going to be in the EV, how many pieces of luggage you're going to have, if you plan to use your AC or your heater, because those things cause you to use more energy. So it calculates where you need to kind of stop and charge. It's a little bit more accurate because it's taking all of these things in consideration. You will also put in the speed that you drive. So, a lot of times when your car says that you have like 240 miles of range, that's if you're driving 60 miles per hour on the freeway. So if you tend to drive a little bit faster on the freeway, you might not get that exactly as much range. So what else? Oh yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about when you're road tripping before we go, and I'm going to demo PlugShare. but many hotels have something called destination charging. So you can plug into the hotel when you're there. And now I noticed, like with Expedia, you can plug, tick a box that says only search for hotels that have EV charging. Just make sure you check in on the rates, because the rates are set by the hotel, not by the government or by the charging station. It's the hotel. I had an experience recently where I was down in Santa Cruz, and I was being charged a rate even when, overnight when I was plugged in, even though my EV was already charged. It's not like I'm gonna like go downstairs at 1 a.m. and unplug my car when it's done charging. I'm still fighting that one, but with ChargePoint. But just kind of make yourself aware of the pricing if you're using destination charging. I've also been at hotels where it's free. So just kind of make yourself aware of that. It's just a good thing. The other thing is, if I stay in a Vrbo or an Airbnb, I will bring the charging cable with me, and I can charge there. So I typically, just as a courtesy, will reach out to the property owner and ask them, hey, I drive electric. Is it okay if I charge while I'm staying in your home for 3 days? And every time I've done that, they've been like, sure, no problem at all. I would be happy to throw down a $10 or a $20 bill and like thank them, but they've never asked. So, I also sometimes, like when I'm going down to visit my family, I might bring my charger and just plug in when I'm there. So it's kind of handy. I just kind of keep an extension cord in my car in case that happens. I know once I was going up to, it wasn't Tahoe, it was a different ski resort, and there wasn't an abundant amount of EV charging around. So I was really happy that I was able to charge in the home where I was staying. So I'm going to go off the presentation for a minute and just talk a little bit here about PlugShare. Wow, I just put in a search before this, since this webinar is sponsored by Palo Alto Utilities. So I have like plugged this in. This is not my car, but it is just a regular CCS car. And so with PlugShare, there is a filter that you can use and apply certain things. So what I did on my filter is I applied which type of charging I'm looking for. So I plugged this in for fast charging. So if you're doing fast charging, if that's what you're looking for, you're on a road trip, it's the CCS SAE network that you want to have ticked. You don't want to have, so if you wanted to just do level 2 charging, like let's say you're, shopping and you just want to like around town, you're not on a road trip, you could look for J1772. That's level 2 charging. That's the kind that I use when I am like at the farmer's market. But in this case, I just wanted to look to see which ones were like level 3. I just want to give you a little tip here. So you can toggle all of them on here if I'm looking for all of the different charging stations around, and you can toggle them all off and then select the one. So if I only want level 2, it'll show me in green all of the level 2s. But then if I want only level 3 super fast chargers, I just want that one selected. And of course, if you're driving a Tesla, you want a supercharging station, you just click on that. This other Tesla has level 2 Tesla charging, and then the same if you drive a Nissan Leaf right here. And then you can also look here at like, which are the charging networks? So, hey, I'm going to do a road trip up to Canada, so I just want to look for Electrify Canada. You can again toggle these all off and on. It's just easier to manage it than to click all of them. So the most common ones, as I mentioned before, Electrify America, EVgo. I will say, like, if you're going to LA, I noticed Flow has quite a big network down in LA. Shell Recharge is something that I have close to my house. A lot of our public schools have Shell Recharge. Wait, what was the other one? ChargePoint. So these are the most common ones. So these are the ones that I have toggled on. Ooh, this is like a fun little tip. Volta offers free charging. So you might have seen these at your mall nearby. They have like a little poster, like a marketing sign next to them. And that's how they pay for the electricity, through advertisement. So it gives you a free charge. Level 2, it's not fast. but it's at least something. If you're at the shopping center and you want to pick up a couple miles, that's pretty handy. So yeah, so if I just came straight to this website, you know, I'm like, I just had put in here Palo Alto in honor of our sponsor. And then I'm going to click these 3 lines here. And, you know, that's how you get to this filter. So you can, you know, filter on. So you can choose your, the plugs and choose the charging networks that you're going to use. Okay, I'm going to close the filters because I want to plan a road trip. So, okay, so I'm going down to Santa Monica, or actually I'll just do the Santa Barbara trip that I did a while ago. So I started up in San Rafael, and the purple places are the purple icons here are the places where I actually stopped to charge on my road trip. And the way you do it is if you're planning a new road trip, you put in your destination. Let's see, you know, let's say I'm going from San Rafael to Portland. I have done that, and it was a really fun road trip. It'll tell me 630 miles, all the stuff. And then if I need to add a stop here. So let's see. San Francisco, Portland. Let's see. So you can kind of customize it. You want to just show chargers that are along the route. Like I put in like just 2 miles. I don't want to go like, I don't want to drive 10 miles off of my route in order to charge. I think 2 miles is good. You can like avoid tolls, avoid highways. You can put in the minimum power. Like if you have one of these new cars that charges at 250 or 150, you can, you know, put that in there. So trip planner, Okay, so I am trying to add a stop now. So I don't know why this is a little bit funky for me right now. Normally it will, oh, did I put in my car? No. Let's see, center overview. Okay, it just looks a little different than it normally does when I plan my trips, but I am going to advise you to play around a little bit. Oh, maybe, okay, let me, I don't know, put in a different, I don't think it should matter. Okay, so it should tell me where I need to add a stop. Well, okay, let's see. Oh, okay, this is how I'm doing it. Okay. I know, for example, that my car has a 220-mile range and I drive a little faster than 60 miles an hour. So I'm just going to start looking for something that's about 180 miles away. So I'm going to add this to my trip. And so this is 136 miles. So I could actually go a little farther than that. That's a little too far. So, okay, so I might want to start here. Okay, so let's say I want to go to this Black Bear Diner in Willows at 136 miles. Gosh, I'm sorry. I'm not doing a really good job of demonstrating this right now. Let me get rid of this one and do another one. Okay, well, I'm going to go a little farther. Okay, let me try to go here. Add to trip. So that one's perfect. It's about 200 miles away. So it takes about 3 hours and 8 minutes to get there. Now I can take a look at this, where it is located. So it does have CCS SAE charging, fast charging. It lets me know it's at a restaurant, so I can get dinner there. And then it lets me know the payment, like how much does it cost to charge here? Free to park for 50 minutes, then 10 cents. But you can get your full charge within 50 minutes if you're doing level 3. It has restrooms, EV parking, kind of gives you a little, this one has just one plug. So honestly, I wouldn't choose this one because I want to go to a place that has 6 to 10 plugs because I want to make sure that I can find a charger there. So I would then, choose another one. Maybe the Target in Reading. Let me get rid of this guy and do this one instead. What does it look like here? Come on now. One plug. Oh, 2 plug. Okay. So it is going to take a little bit of playing around with this for sure to kind of map out your trip. I've never really seen chargers that only have one plug, so that's a little bit strange. Maybe that's because I have a different car. Sorry. Let me do a Kia Niro, for example. Let's see if this is a little different. Maybe it only had one Tesla plug.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
It sounds like you've had an EV for a while. Have you seen the number of times that you end up having to wait for a charger increasing?
Yes. I haven't really, and I'll just to be honest here. First of all, before I answer that question, I just want to say, when you first sign up for PlugShare, they have a walkthrough demo on how to do this. It seems like some things have changed since the last time I planned a trip on PlugShare. So I apologize for this not being like making it seem super easy. I have charged in Shasta before. Okay. Hang on a sec. I'm going to go back here and go back to the presentation so I can see some faces here. Okay. I mostly take a road trip in a Tesla, and the Tesla charging networks have been expanding very quickly. So I haven't really seen a big difference. There's definitely some etiquette that takes place. With Tesla, there is like a line that forms. So sometimes I show up and there are like 3 cars ahead of me, and you just kind of like line up behind that car and then, fill in. The good news is that charging is really fast. Fast charging is very fast. So if there are like 10 charging stations, you don't typically have to wait very long. You are waiting for, like 5 or 10 minutes. People pull in and pull out. I guess I can say, like on my last road trip, yeah, it's maybe a little bit of a difference, but there are more and more charging stations being installed all the time. And I will say this, that the charging reliability for Tesla superchargers they're more reliable than the CCS charging stations. We're working to make sure that there is more higher reliability for all of the fast chargers that are out there. But it's interesting, like I've been actually going around Marin County testing a lot of level 3 charging stations. And it's interesting. People don't really know what to do when there's a line, or like, sometimes I see cars in different places. And so I feel like we need to communicate with people a little bit more, like what is the best etiquette, So I would recommend for people that they kind of start forming a line. If there are, 4 charging stations and they're all being used, maybe park your car in the line, like leave it there and communicate with other people and let them know I was here and you can form a line behind me. This is all kind of new territory, having so many EVs out there. So I think we're all trying to figure out this etiquette the best as possible. Yeah, Tesla, if you are driving a Tesla, honestly, you can use their tool, but you can also just go into the navigator inside the car and figure it out that way. It's very easy. Yeah, the brown versus the gray. I think the gray means there's actually a, sorry. Sometimes you'll see some that have like a wrench in them. That means that it's out of order. The gray means that it's in use. The brown is just the high powered ones, you know, the orange ones. The green is level 2 charging. Yeah, the wrench is that it's like out of service at the time. Yeah, chargers in use. Great. Thanks all for checking the chat while I was not able to do so. So I wanted to just point this out about a road trip also. A lot of people now who are getting their EVs, they are getting some free charging with a particular charging network. So I know, for example, some people have, like, if you buy the Volkswagen ID.4, you get 3 years of free charging with the with Electrify America. So in that case, you might use the Electrify America navigation app, because they will only map out the where the Electrify America charging stations are, which is handy because if you don't want to pay for charging, then you only want to go to those. I have a friend who drives up to the San Juan Islands from Sausalito twice a year in his Chevy Bolt, and he uses Electrify America. He's found that to be the most reliable network. If you guys are ever going on a long road trip, he's happy to talk to you and kind of coach you through it. I have sometimes had to take my e-Golf. My e-Golf only has 80 miles of range, so I try not to road trip with it. I've had to take it up to Sacramento a couple times and to a few farther places. And so that's when I'm playing around more with these, PlugShare and the navigation apps, and really trying to find my way to the next place. Yeah, so talked a little bit about the most common charging networks in that last, when we were looking at PlugShare. So Electrify America, EVgo, ChargePoint. Really, Electrify America and EVgo and Tesla really are the 3 most common level 3 charging apps or networks. ChargePoint has a lot of level 2 and has some level 3 as well. So these are kind of like the big hitters. That's why I just included them here. And as I mentioned earlier, Tesla is now at least piloting opening up their super fast charging stations to other cars. What I do want to say with Electrify America and EVgo, they do have payment systems, so you can pay with a credit card. As I mentioned, I've been testing fast chargers in the last several months, and I've noticed that when charging stations are broken, it's typically because the payment system isn't working. So I highly recommend using the apps. Like with Electrify America, I can kind of just plug it in, go sit in my car, and I can actually just start the charging session from my app. With EVgo, I have to hold my phone up, and it has to like kind of connect to my app to the kiosk there to make sure we get the charge starting. And I will say just about this that, our mission is to reduce carbon emissions. That's why we're doing this work. We really wish that the charging networks were, universal and worked really, really well. We're doing a lot of advocacy now at the White House level and at the state level to really advocate for simpler systems so that it's like going to a gas station. Because if we really want this transition to electric, it has to be that way. So we're still, just in that, we're a little bit past the early adopter phase, but we're really moving into this next territory. They're building out new networks, and we really hope that there are more standards so that things are universal and easy. I know, for example, like Tesla was offered a lot of state money to build out their network for CCS and Tesla for all EVs to use. And they refused the money because the state of California said that they had to include a payment system, like paying with a credit card. And they said, no, we don't do charging that way. We have it through our app, and that's the only way we're going to do it. And, we're sort of in agreement with that because it works, and we really want high reliability. Probably too much information here, but I just wanted to kind of let you know, just has no level 3. Well, some Some Chevy Bolts, Dan, do have level 3 chargers. You can pay extra to get level 3 charging. Like my friend takes his Chevy Bolt all the way up to the San Juan Islands and back twice a year. My boss used to take her Bolt down to LA and back and only use level 3, but it doesn't come standard with all the Chevy Bolts. Our salesperson said that using the 120 volt, I'm using 120 volt consistently is not good for the Polestar 2. I cannot imagine why it would not be good, because that's the slowest charging. So I think it would do the least harm to your battery. And I've never heard that before, Stephanie. I would just say, maybe like read the manual or try to contact Polestar directly, not the dealer. Sometimes there's a lot of turnover in a lot of dealerships, and people at the dealer level don't know a lot about EVs. Like, for example, when I was first buying an EV, I went to get a Chevy Bolt, and the salesperson was saying the problem with EVs is that there's no power in the cars. I'm like, really? I thought it was the opposite. And I've been to other dealers that are like, EVs aren't ready. EVs don't work yet. The technology isn't here. So we've actually tried to get funding to educate dealers, but the problem is there's so much turnover. So new staff comes in, they don't know a lot about EVs. So that's why we offer our education programs, because we do a lot of research about EVs. I don't know if any of you attended our EV 101 webinars, but they're much more basic. We do, talk about incentives. We talk about all the different models available, basics on charging. But, we really do a lot of research so we can give you the latest information possible. Awesome. That's great. Thank you so much for doing that, Tesla, whoever is on there. Excellent. Yeah, I don't want to take time away just talking about Tesla also, since people have a variety of EVs here on this webinar. So here's another kind of bonus about driving electric. Some people are worried about getting an EV because they won't be able to power them during power outages, but EVs can actually help. So you can buy an inexpensive 300-watt inverter, the red box right there, that you plug into the accessory port of your EV. This is legal and allowed on every electric vehicle. You can power up small appliances like cell phones, laptops, LED lights. When we lost power in San Rafael for 5 days a couple of years ago, I used this and I plugged in an extension cord, and I had plugged in a bunch of string lights. So we had a little bit of comfort in our living room. Really easy to use. Sometimes if we lose power during the day and my computer isn't charged, I'll just kind of plug it in and I can continue working. You do have to have your EV on during that time, but not to worry, there are no emissions when your EV is on and you're not really you're using a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of its energy. Dan, I see your question. I'll come back to you in a minute when I get to the end of the slide. So while this low wattage inverter, only 300-watt box, cannot power up your refrigerator, some new EVs that started coming out last year can, like the Kia EV6, the Hyundai Ioniq 5. I know the Ocean Fisker that's about to come out, and the Genesis GV60 can, because they offer bidirectional adapter. So that's the picture there in the middle. We just had an EV show, and this past weekend, we were popping popcorn off of this adapter. So this is like 1900-watt adapter. So you can actually power up your refrigerator for a week or more if you have a full charge and there's a power outage. So really great in terms of resiliency. The F-150 Lightning that came out last year offers the technology to connect your home to your home's electrical panel to power up your entire home. It acts like a clean generator, really. We talk about that more in our EVs for Backup Power webinar. There's one coming up on the 31st of this month. The technology of inverters is advancing very quickly. There are several companies working on vehicle to home management systems, like you can see in the picture on the right. that is Decibel. There's also Wallbox. There's a bunch of other companies in this business right now. So this would act as your charger, but it's a bi-directional charger. So you plug it in, to charge it, you leave it plugged in. So when you come home at night, you can plug it in, and then you're actually feeding your home electricity from your EV, because the EV battery is really, really large. Like on my Tesla Model 3, it's the same as 5 Tesla Powerwalls. So you can, on a daily basis, be feeding your home all the electricity it needs from like 4 to 9 p.m. when electricity is expensive and not very clean. And then at midnight or when the sun is shining, you can actually recharge your car with clean energy. So this is really, really exciting new technology. We're not quite there yet. I think this Decibel, these systems work right now with the Nissan Leaf. It's something that they've been working on in Japan for many, many years. We hope that this technology, we estimate that this technology will be available in 1 or 2 years. It's really exciting, and it's a whole new way of looking at how we can manage electricity and our energy. Okay, Dan.
Yeah, actually, my question is exactly on this topic. So you mentioned that for all EV cars, it doesn't matter which brand, we can buy a like an inverter, right? And then have the inverter plug into the socket, and then I can use the inverter to run like cell phone, laptop, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
So for that setup, I will not be able to run washer, dryer, refrigerator, right? For the household.
It has to be under 300 watt. Okay, so
gotcha.
Small things like cell phones, maybe a router, a computer, string lights. I noticed, like, I had a bunch of string lights and I was reading on it. It takes 3 watts each of those string lights. So you want to just check to see whatever appliance it is. I actually checked because I had to buy a new popcorn machine for our event this weekend. 900 watts it runs it. So you could not run a popcorn machine if you were starving and all you had popcorn. You couldn't run a popcorn machine off of the red box, but you could if you have one of these new cars with a bi-directional charger. If you
that was my follow-up. Yeah. So somebody said that bi-directional is just one term. There was another car that I can't remember which one, but it has the ability to run like refrigerators and washer and dryers in the household in case of an electric outage. But she said it's not called a bi-direction. It's something, it's another term. It just provides, like, the car battery is able to provide, like you're saying, almost like a Tesla wall, but even more powerful. I can't remember which term. But anyway, if you
people do call it vehicle to load. There's a whole like larger technology is called V2X, vehicle to anything. But this specifically, if you are charging one particular appliance from your car, it is called vehicle to load. There's also vehicle to grid, where you can feed electricity into the grid. That's being piloted right now with PG&E. And there's also vehicle to home. That's like the Ford system, where you're actually, feeding electricity into, through your electric panel.
So those are different from bi-directional. What does bi-directional mean?
This is really bi-directional. So it just means that the electricity can go both ways. Typically, in most cars, in all cars, we are charging our EVs. So the energy is going into our EV, right? So we can charge that battery. But bi-directional means that it can also be used to leave the car and go to use either an appliance or plug into your home or the grid.
Something else that you mentioned compared to the Tesla wall, it's really exciting to me. I've never imagined that's the case. You said that our EV car battery is actually even more powerful than a Tesla wall. That means that if I have a fully charged EV car, I can use that battery to run my household for like a few days with no problems, right? And is that only a few cars, or most of the bi-directional cars? I can't remember the name, but maybe you have a list. Most the bi-directional cars would have a battery that big that I don't even need to use the Tesla wall. I can just use the battery as if it's a Tesla wall.
I'll just say this, some people are buying batteries as well for resiliency. Everybody on my organization, Cool the Earth's board, we're all waiting. I'm not on the board, but our board members who are scientists and engineers, and myself, we're all waiting for this last technology advancement, the these energy management systems so that we don't have to buy an external battery. We are waiting to use the battery in our EV to power up our home. But if some people don't feel comfortable waiting and they want to get a battery right now, that's a great option as well for more resilience.
Yeah, this is really exciting. I mean, I don't think it's been publicized in the mainstream media about one of the benefits of EV cars, because in essence, the size of the batteries in these little tiny EV cars could actually run a household. I think that's a very powerful message to spread.
It's super interesting. And like when we think about, for resilience, and then also eventually to kind of balance our grid, like when people are saying, oh, when everybody gets an EV, we're going to lose our power all the time. That's not really the case, because the batteries in the EV are really just storage, electricity storage. Yeah, it is. I agree with you. It's really fascinating. I'm going to take a couple questions that I see here right now. What is better for the life? Oh, by the way, Tesla, I know somebody is here from Tesla, but by the way, I just wanted to say that that Tesla has made an announcement that by 2024, their EVs will be bidirectional capable. So what's better for the life of the battery, level 1 or level 2? So I'll give you my honest answer. There hasn't been enough testing from the manufacturers on this yet. What we do know with lithium-ion batteries is that, charging them slower and charging them to 80% is, keeping them between 20 and 80 is probably the optimal charge where you want to keep your battery. But the testing that we have seen, like Tesla has this thing called like the Tesla Loop. They have it in Vegas and in Los Angeles. So they have cars that are constantly circulating and giving people rides. And they use level 3 charging, and only super fast level 3 charging all the time. And they're driving their cars, all the time. And they're not seeing any evidence of battery degradation. So it's, it may be nominal between level 1 and level 2. I was just surprised that somebody said that it would not be good for the battery to use level 1. Okay, why would you need an inverter to charge a phone? Right, but if they're, okay. You could use, you could use a USB outlet. That's fine as well. You'll have to have your EV on. It's just something that, with this, you can plug in an extension cord if you need the electricity to reach to your house, if that makes sense. I did an extension cord, and then, like I had a bunch of plugs so I could plug in a bunch of different things. So it extended the reach into my home. But yeah, absolutely. You can just turn on your motor, turn on your car, and then just plug in your computer or your phone. Absolutely. Good point, Stephanie. Do you have recommendations for home levels? I actually will, that need to stay outside. I will send a guide for charging stations at the end of this webinar, or in my follow-up email. Okay, so I want to just talk a little bit about incentives and total cost of ownership. So although some early EV drivers paid a lot of money, a premium for electric cars, today's EV drivers often save money, and this is why. It costs much less to fuel an electric car. So fueling a gas car can be 2 to 5 times more expensive than fueling an EV, depending upon where and when you charge it. There's time of use rates that come into play, and then different charges depending upon where you live. Electricity prices also tend to be much more stable than gas prices, as we've seen in the past few years. In addition, maintenance costs are 40% lower for EVs. It's basically adding windshield wiper fluid and rotating your tires. And then there are these standard incentives available for up to $9,500, which can help bring down the cost of an EV. And I'll talk a little bit about those now. So there are currently 4 types of incentives. These are standard incentives that will help you save up to $9,500 when you buy an EV. Additional grants and rebates are available for both new and used cars for people who qualify. If their income is at 4 times poverty level or below, They could qualify for lots of grants and rebates. Many of these grants have to be applied for in advance, and it might take 3 to 6 months to process them. So keep that in mind. The California state rebate is available for many EV buyers and has some income qualifications and vehicle price limits. You have to claim this rebate within 3 months of taking ownership of your EV. The federal tax credit was revamped last year. It's now called the Clean Vehicle Credit. There are some new qualifications for this tax credit, which we'll review on the next few slides. And new this year, there is a credit for used EVs. That also has, well, in order to qualify for the tax credit, there are now some income limits that they have put into place against, and keep in mind, all of the tax credits are against your tax liability. So you have to owe $7,500 at the end of the year in order to take advantage of that. The same currently for the pre-owned. There is the home charging federal tax credit. That's to install a level 2 charger, 30% of the cost up to $1,000. That could be for the cost of the electrician, the cost of wiring, to install the 240-volt outlet, and the cost of the actual charger. And then there are also some utility and CCA incentives. For example, PG&E now has a used EV rebate, $1,000 standard rebate, and more if your income qualifies. And certain like Peninsula Clean Energy and MCE have some incentives as well. The best place to go to find out exactly which incentives you qualify for is like, you can check out one of these 2 savings calculators. They're super handy and they'll tell you exactly what you qualify for. I'm going to look at the chat real quickly before I move on. Okay, thanks, Pat. When you say bolts, you were talking about EUV bolts. Yes, they charge at the same speed. Yeah.
Right. One other thing, can you say, you mentioned that there may be some tax credits or subsidies for electricians for installing level 2s. Is that right? Did I hear that right?
Yes, that's the home charging federal tax credit. If you go to our incentives page, we have a link for that. It's basically a form when you file your taxes. So 30% of the cost of the install, and that can be like the electrician's time as well as all the wiring. Like when we did it, we have 2 EVs, so we just paid for wiring a 120-volt outlet and a 240-volt outlet to the side of our house where we park our cars. I think I got $250 tax credit, but I'll take it. It's all good.
Sure. And so, sorry, that's on one of those 2 URLs you have listed there, or?
Yes.
Oh, I see, right.
It's on those URLs, and if you go to our website, we have a bunch of information also about incentives. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
It will come up. It will pop up if you use one of those savings calculators for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Otherwise, you could you could just like Google search EV charger federal tax credit, and it'll come up. It's basically all you need is the form, the tax form, and your tax advisor might have that information as well.
Just really quick on the federal credit. If someone has no federal credit liability, like for example, low income, that means that they're not able to get a $7,500 tax credit, right?
Yep. Is
there any options for low income individuals to get something equivalent to the $7,500 federal credit?
Yes, absolutely. So if you're low income, which means 4 times federal poverty level or below, the California state rebate is $7,500. And starting in June, it's going to be a rebate that is a point of sale rebate. So you'll get it upfront. So you can get that $7,500 upfront, like a down payment. So that's one thing. And then there are a bunch of other grants that I'm happy to talk about at the end of the webinar. And I would also recommend that you attend Actera, is a partner organization. They do webinars specifically about these low income incentives. But I know all the information. I'm happy to share it with you at the end of the webinar, but I don't, I want to just get through like the standard rebates first. Okay, thanks, Dan. Okay, so yeah, a little more information here about the state rebate. Apply within 3 months. The standard rebate for EVs is $2,000, and for a plug-in hybrid, it's $1,000. You could do online or mail-in. There are some exclusions for the state rebate. If the EV is priced over 45K and it's a smaller EV, it does not qualify. And 60,000 if it's like an SUV or kind of a crossover SUV. And if your income as an individual is over 135 or over 200, if you file joint, you do not qualify for the state rebate. As I said, yeah, income qualified up to 7,500. And the place to go is cleanvehiclerebate.org. It's called the CVRP rebate. And that has all the information about qualifying cars, and that's where you would apply from. So the next slides are all about the federal clean vehicle tax credit. So before April 18th, you had to purchase a new EV. There were certain requirements. Final assembly had to be in North America. There are vehicle price limits. Unfortunately, they're different from the state rebates, but fortunately, they're a little higher. I wish it was just all standard and really easy. There are different income limits here also. So for the federal tax credit, if you file joint, 300,000 or less instead of 200,000 or less. This is the place to go to find out more information. Fueleconomy.gov. It tells you all of the EVs that qualified. So if you purchased your EV between January 1st and April 17th, which many of you may have, these were the EVs that qualified. By the way, I just want to say I'm not a tax advisor, so please check in with your tax advisor or somebody beforehand. Now, if you purchased your EV after April 18th, there is an additional requirement. It's highlighted at the bottom. It has to do with the critical minerals that are in the battery and the battery components. So now we have two separate rebate tax credits. So you can get $37.50 if the vehicle qualifies for one of those, and the full $7,500 if it qualifies for all of them. You can find out which ones qualify there, or you could look at this list right here. And it tells you exactly the amount that they qualify for. I'll just tell you, like, for example, the Tesla Model 3, if you got like the standard, the lowest end Tesla Model 3, you would only qualify for $3,750 because it only met one of those battery requirements. But for all of the other Model 3s and for all of the Ys, you would get the $7,500 tax credit. Okay, I'll be sharing this slideshow with you too. Now, here's a whole nother thing, Dan. I think you asked that question. So if you haven't gotten an EV yet, this could be interesting. So there is a potential workaround around all of these requirements. If you lease an EV, the dealership may pass on the $7,500 credit when they figure out your lease payment. So essentially, for a leased car, it's not going to be like a residential or an individual tax credit. It's going to be a commercial tax credit. And it's actually the bank that owns the car. So the bank can pass on that $7,500 to you if you lease it, because they are taking the credit. This is not the case for all manufacturers. Like I am a big fan of Tesla. I don't favor any of the EVs. I think they're all great in their own way. I love my Tesla, so I think it's great, but they're not passing it on at this point yet. They're not passing it on if you lease, but a lot of the others are passing it on. I will say that they are not necessarily calling it a federal tax credit, tax lease credit. They're calling it often like a lease credit or a lease bonus. But it's interesting to note that most of them are $7,500. Definitely check with your dealer before you lease. Just make sure that you're getting that. Ask them for it. That's why it's good to come to a webinar like this, so you know that this is a potential. And then I wanted to just address a little bit. There's this new pre-owned EV credit up to 30% of the sales. This 30% of the sales price up to a $4,000 max. The price cap for the used EV is $25,000. It must be purchased from a licensed dealer, and there are more stringent income limits as well. The good news is that in 2024, for this federal tax credit, the credit will be available upfront as a rebate. and it can be used as a down payment. So rather than, having to wait until you file your taxes and just make it that way, like that will be super handy. I just want to note from our nonprofit, overall, we're very excited about the state of incentives right now because we believe we're moving in the right direction in terms of providing incentives for those who really need it, bringing more green jobs to the US, and relying less on unpredictable sources for battery components and assembly. I see one question in the chat. Okay, is the Senator credit only good if you bought? No, but no. If you purchased it before, okay, this gets a little complicated, but if you purchased it before August 15th, I think it is, 2022, all EVs qualified. If you purchased it after August 15th, only the EVs that are manufactured in North America qualified. But there were no vehicle price limits, there were no income caps or anything like that.
For the 2024, is there going to be an income limitation to get the 7,500 rebate?
Yes, if you purchase, but not if you lease. Yeah,
Gotcha.
all of the requirements that hang on a second, let me go back here. All of these requirements here are now set in place for 10 years. This is the Inflation Reduction Act. So, but on the good news is that we're seeing like Kia and Hyundai are now building manufacturing factories in the United States. So a lot of manufacturers are like, whoa, we want Americans to buy our cars. So they are starting to build them in the United States. So this more and more EVs will be, and then I know they're also kind of like negotiating with like a lot, like Korea was particularly upset about this because they have a lot of EVs and they're really in the forefront of electric vehicle technology. So they were pretty upset about this, no Kias or Hyundais qualify. And I know a lot of European manufacturers were really upset about this as well, because we're like trade partners with Europe. So they're like, what the heck? Why are we not, why are you not working with us? So there might be some negotiations that take place, but yeah, thank you, Connie. The link that you put in there is the place to go to find out exactly which vehicles qualify, and that will be updated, all the time. Okay, moving along. Oh yeah, I wanted to note some, there are some utilities, CCAs, and city rebates. So like PG&E has that pre-owned EV rebate. MCEV, it's actually called the MCE Instant Rebate, just came back starting May 1st for income qualified folks that live in the MCE service area. Peninsula Clean Energy has some programs for used EVs. Some cities offer free charging, and that's a really nice perk. So that's why it's good to go to the EV, go to these the savings calculators. They'll let you know like where the free charging is in your town. It's just really great. Thanks for coming, Kathy. I know some people are dropping off. Right now I know we're getting past the time, and we're really past the time. I'm sorry about that. I just wanted to say thank you. I will continue the presentation, but I want to thank everybody for coming to this presentation. Okay, there's also the Clean Air Vehicle decal, which allows you to drive in the HOV lane for 3 years when you purchase this decal for $22 from the DMV. All right, it's time for Q&A. There are a few of us left. Dan, do you still have any question? Your hand is raised.
This is Daniel, not Dan.
Oh, Daniel.
No, different person.
There's a different Dan who has their hand raised.
Yeah.
But if anybody, yeah,
It's okay. I can go first, or Daniel, do you want to go first too?
I have a quick one. Just about the decals. I know that right now they're all slated to expire in 2025. Do you know, like, is there any thought that, at some point those will actually extend past 2025, or is the state just like, by then we expect there's so many EVs that like it's not going to be practical?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, Palo Alto has the highest EV adoption in the United States. One out of 5 cars are EVs in Palo Alto. I noticed that I think what we've seen is like at the end of the year 2022, 20% of all cars being sold right now are EVs. So this is really good news. Half of them are Teslas, more than half of them are Teslas. The Tesla Model Y is the most popular SUV in the United States by sales right now. So I think, Daniel, to get back to your question, I think they're realizing that we are going to have more and more EVs, that by 2025, we should be on track to having close to 40, maybe, I don't know. I know in Marin County, we have like 7% EV adoption. It's not that high. So Palo Alto is way ahead of us. You know, some of the more affluent neighborhoods in Marin County have a higher EV adoption than other neighborhoods, but so we're not quite there, but I mean, maybe by 2025, with all these new EVs coming, the price of EVs are coming down. There are at least 10 that are, you know, in less than $45,000. The average price of a car in the United States is $47,000. So EVs, so many EVs right now are already cheaper than the average price of any car. And with all of these incentives, we're really hoping to move forward with EV as quickly as possible.
So you think that the decals will actually expire in 2025 and they won't be extended?
Yeah, I wish I knew more, but yeah, I'm guessing that they're anticipating that we'll have so many EVs, like everybody would be in the carpool lane. Like,
Exactly.
Yeah, that defeats the purpose. You know, kind of like the these car pay by carpool thing that we have here. It gets really crowded pretty very soon here in the rush hours.
I noticed
So
down on the peninsula, there are some of those.
Actually,
yeah,
a question about
I
that.
was gonna say, yeah, I was gonna say that for the income limitation, you mentioned one number is 150,000, but then the second number, I think it's 75,000. Am I getting confused? Like starting in 2024 to
You're,
get the $7,500 rebate,
say
what would it be?
it's not you, it's confusing. Let's just say that. So yeah, so with the state rebate, there's a certain number of, there's a certain income limit. It's 125,000 as a single person. With the, if you're buying a new EV for the federal tax credit, it's 150,000 for a single person. And for the used EV rebate, it's 75,000, the federal tax credit. I can't believe I have these numbers in my brain. I mean,
Good for you.
we really wish that, you know, they would
Good
make
for
this
you.
easier, but that's why I rely on those savings calculators. It really makes it a lot easier to understand.
So another question about the I don't know what you call them, the you know, the express lanes, I guess. So with a cleaner decal, is it free to go in those or is it reduced price?
It's reduced price. Yeah. Somebody asked me that like a year ago. And I looked it up. So you get a discount on that. I'm not really sure about that whole thing. I don't know if anybody knows, like, is there an equity piece there? Because it's like, if you have a lot of money, you can get to your destination faster. Maybe there's something special for people who qualify.
Right, that makes sense. All right, thanks.
You know, I've heard that California has a law that at some point, no gas cars will be allowed to be sold. Is that still true?
Yeah,
Or
by
has
2035, there will be, you can't buy a gas car in you can't buy a new gas car in California starting in 2035.
that's only 10 years away.
I wish it were 2030.
But you're saying that there's only 7% adoption rate. So still most of the cars being sold today, like 90% would be gas cars.
No, so today 20% are EVs, but in terms of, you know, people are not everybody's buying a car. So there are so many cars already out here, you know, driving. So like where I live in San Rafael, I think we're at like 6%, yeah, EV adoption. Because there are so many,
got it. Okay.
but the new cars being purchased, like 20% are electric. In Norway, 95% of new cars being purchased are electric.
Oh, I'm surprised. Norway is an oil producing
Yeah,
country,
I know,
right?
it's funny, I know, it's funny because they export their oil, right?
So they just want other people to burn oil and pollute their own countries. They want to stay clean. Makes
Well,
sense.
in terms of air pollution, I guess that makes sense, like local air pollution, but in terms of climate change, it really doesn't matter where you're burning the fuel. Like we all are impacted, even people who live in developing countries who have a very low carbon footprint themselves are being impacted disproportionately by, by us driving gas cars.
Are there incentives for employers when they're putting in new parking or retrofitting parking lots to include chargers?
There's a lot of advocacy being done right now. I've heard that you can actually like contact Electrify America and ask them like, hey, can you install a charger in this shopping center? And they'll do it. The funding from Electrify America actually comes from Dieselgate, that Volkswagen scandal. So they have a lot of money to install EV charging. So
That's funny. Yeah, because like my company right now, there's no chargers in our parking lots, but we're moving to a new campus, and they just said that 10% of the spaces will have chargers.
charging. That's awesome. And hopefully they'll give you a good rate or maybe some free charging even.
Yeah, I don't know how that works. Like whether when companies provide those chargers, whether it's gratis or whether it's charged. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a little different depending where you are. Some give a discount. Some give a discount. Some will give free charging for 2 hours, but you can only be there 2 hours. Some of them have actually systems that they use to manage the EV chargers. So it's like, once you're done, you got to get out, like kind of like those linger fees, like get out and let everybody who works here charge.
Well, I mean, it would be nice if because my company offers a $300 a month commuter benefit, right? But they're also located in such a place where at least for me, that commuter benefit is worthless. I can't take it's Caltrain.
No public transportation. You know what? I would go right in there and advocate for that and just say, how can you help me out? Because I'm driving, I have a clean drive, so I'm helping.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe that's the way they pass that on actually through, that's a good point, through giving you free charging or something. Maybe
Right,
that's the benefit,
Right, yeah, the $300 credit could be applied towards charging. That would be nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have any statistics on how many companies are offering free charging?
I don't, but I mean, I've seen like lots of presentations. When I first started working here like 4.5 years ago, I went to a presentation by Cliff Bars. They're a pretty big company. They have a lot of their offices out in Idaho now and Emeryville. They were offering $6,000 for people who go electric. So there's all sorts of different benefits going on.
I was just talking to friends of mine from Microsoft or Google or something. These big companies, I think I'm hearing that they're not offering just flat free charging, like only if you carpool, if you are, have some special conditions you can meet. Otherwise, I don't think there's even free charging at the company side anymore.
Yeah, you'll have to ask, and I would advocate and just say, we're doing right by the earth. Like if you work for a big company and you have a sustainability team, go talk to them and just push for it because you're doing the right thing. Does the car, oh wait, sorry, Kelly, I do my taxes on TurboTax and bought an EV Bolt and you should get a credit. Oh wait.
No.
No, December 2022, the Chevy Bolts did not qualify because
No, I bought it in 2022, but it was a 2023.
Yeah, because you bought it in 2022, it did not qualify, unfortunately, because Chevys and Teslas did not qualify because that was on the old tax credit system that had been in place for 10 years. And with that system, there was a cap. So when they had reached a certain number of sales per manufacturer, the credit disappeared. I'm sorry about that, but you should have been able to get the state rebate.
No, I didn't get the state either because I couldn't qualify for the federal.
No, it's a totally separate thing.
I know, that's what they said. I put it in and the state didn't give me any credit on it.
That's not when you do your taxes. You have to apply for it online. It's a separate thing. You apply through CVRP, the Clean Vehicle Rebate Program. But you had to do that within 3 months of taking delivery.
I heard the Bolt is going away. Like there's no Chevy Bolt anymore,
Yeah,
right?
it's true. In 2024, it's going away. I mean, this is the last year, yeah, that they're doing them.
Are
It's
they
a-
replacing it with something else?
it's such a, it's such a nice, easy to park, peppy, fun car to drive. It's really quite awesome. So it's a real bummer. And they are replacing it. There's like the Chevy Equinox and the Chevy Blazer EV. So they have 2 more cars. They're bigger cars. But I know a lot of people, especially environmentalists, want smaller cars, the most efficient cars possible.
And it'll be more expensive, right? It won't be as same price as the Bolt with the newer ones.
No, but actually they're pretty reasonable. They're in like the 30 to 40 mile range. I just wanted to address Mindy's question. Does the car power inverter work with the Tesla Model Y? The red box, it's by like Berserk Tech. I bought it on Amazon. The 300-watt inverter does work in every EV. It actually works in gas cars too, but you have to have the car on, and we don't want people sitting there with their idling in their gas cars. So we don't tell people who have gas cars about that.
You said you're going to share the presentation with us by email?
Yes, I'll send a follow-up email and share the presentation. Stay in touch, come to more of our webinars. A lot of people come to 2 or 3 webinars, and it's an opportunity to ask questions, at the end. So if you have more questions. And then another thing, like as your new users, new owners, YouTube has great videos. Like if you're like, how do I set my, my car to only charge to 80%, YouTube it. And there are also tons of forums now for every EV model out there. So ask in the forums, all that stuff.
The Facebook groups for all the cars, right? I mean, like 3 separate Ionic groups on Facebook. One 41, a US one, and then like a global one.
That's awesome. Yeah, so it's a great resource just to find out. I know a lot about the cars that I have, but I don't know exactly how every EV works. I have more general information. So yeah, these forums are great. YouTube is great. Mindy, I'm looking at your question. Let's see. Yeah, thanks so much. On EV incentives, I entered income 100,000 for joint. What car did you put in? If it was an EV that was not manufactured in North America, it wouldn't qualify. The Tesla Model Y? Okay, I'm gonna go there. Does anybody else have questions? Mindy, I'm gonna look at it with you together. I'm gonna pull it up on my screen. Are there any other questions?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming. Thank you for going EV.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. I'm going to go off this presentation and let's see. Okay, popped right up for me. So what's your zip code?
It's 95148.
Or 8. Do you mind that I'm doing this? There are a few people left
Sure.
on.
Sure.
Okay. Tesla Model Y. Oh, which
Long range.
Okay, long range. The income limit is 60,000 for the state rebate. Okay, but that's okay.
No, but for the federal of 7,500, if you scroll to the very bottom.
Yeah. So size of household.
2.
Okay. And then
Married. It just says you may qualify, but if you scroll to the very bottom, based on your input, you are not eligible for the,
Oh, this is different. It's really weird. They just made this change. This is if you lease it.
oh, okay, okay.
So because they have one that says tax credit for leased,
I see.
and this just explains this tax credit for leased vehicles is not received directly to the customer, but rather passed through the customer by
I
the,
see. Okay.
but yeah, you see it up here, so you should.
Oh, okay, okay, my mistake, sorry.
No, that's okay. If you retire an old vehicle, you can also,
Mhm. If you retired, if you sold it, let's say to CarMax and you receive money for it, then you're not eligible for that.
you
then.
have to retire it. They want to take it off the road.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you,
Great,
Anika.
sure.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. All right, are there any more questions at all?